economic calendar, geopolitics, and UK politics, all with Bob Mason of FX Empire. This is The Week Ahead. Mr. Mason, thank you so much for joining us once again as we look at the week ahead. Regarding the economic calendar, we're in the final week of November. What should our traders be looking out for?
It's a busy week ahead on the economic calendar. From the Eurozone, Germany's in focus. We've got business and consumer confidence and unemployment numbers. With rising unemployment being reported and weighing on consumer confidence, this week's figures will be quite telling. Expect the euro to take a bit of a hit if unemployment numbers rise. And that would expect to, influence consumer confidence and ultimately spending that has been a support mechanism for the Eurozone economy. From the US, we've got consumer confidence, third estimate GDP numbers and inflation figures in focus. Barring deviation from second estimates, we'd expect consumer confidence and inflation to be the key drivers. For the Kiwi dollar, trade data will be in focus, after the RBNZ's hold. Any weak numbers will raise the chances of a rate cut near term. And then moving over to the loonie, GDP numbers out at the end of the week, will definitely garner some interest. Bank of Canada Governor Polis had spoken of, holding rates steady with the current policy supportive of the economy. If GDP numbers disappoint, however, that may change with other members of the Bank of Canada committee being more dovish.
There's a lot of events and processes going on at the moment. There's a lot to watch. But how about the Commonwealth? Maybe we can focus on the UK and Canada. Maybe you can tell us what's going on there.
It's quite a week ahead on the economic calendar for the pound. That leaves the pound firmly in the hands of UK politics. We can expect the Asian markets to respond further, to tonight's leadership debate, which includes the four leading party leaders. Going into next week, we can expect the opinion polls to be the key driver at the start of the week. Focus will then shift to Thursday and Friday. On Thursday, Sky News has proposed a three-party leadership debate, and then the BBC on Friday will be doing a seven-party leadership debate. Expect the pound to get plenty of volatility going into the end of the week. We saw how the pound moved last week on Tuesday's debate. With the number of party leaders on the rise, seven-party debate's hardly going to be quiet, and expect plenty of chatter and influence on the pound. 19 days till election day, so volatility should begin to pick up now. For the loonie in the week ahead, as I mentioned, the GDP numbers are there. Last week we saw Bank of Canada Polis say that rates were sitting in the right place to support the economy. Obviously, so any economic data this week that suggests otherwise will weigh on the loonie. Going into the weekend, chances of a rate cut sit at 10%. They were up at 20% before Polis's comments. There's also been some talk about the national rail strike. Obviously, if this does begin to extend, then that is going to start hurting the economy. Expectations are that, this should resolve quickly, which has limited the downside for the loonie, this week. Obviously, trade talks will have, plenty of impact on the Canadian dollar. The loonie's very sensitive to trade. So if there's any further negative updates from the US or Beijing, and expect there to be pressure on crude oil prices and the loonie.
That wraps it up for scheduled events, but what about geopolitics? What are we looking at for next week?
Never a dull moment on the geopolitical front. Obviously there's trade talks that are going to continue to garner the most amount of interest across the financial markets. Will Donald Trump decide to agree to roll back tariffs to appease China? Obviously the Hong Kong bills, awaiting his signature. If he doesn't veto, those tensions are going to rise. So Trump's going to have to give China something for them to agree to a phase one agreement. For Beijing, getting the US to agree to a rollback would, ease some pressure and, support their decision to sign. If they don't roll back tariffs, there's going to be some trouble. Obviously, Hong Kong unrest is going to be in focus. Then going across to the UK, you've got UK politics. We've got, televised debates that will continue to influence the pound, along with the opinion polls. There's also impeachment to consider. I think Trump's lost support of one Republican member so far. They're standing firm. Trump could lose support from other areas, however, that could ultimately lead to his, impeachment and ultimately removal from office. For now, though, Republicans are in support, so the dollar's not, having a panic moment, despite the testimonies that were given throughout last week.
Thank you so much for joining us once again today, Mr. Mason. It was a pleasure. That was the week ahead with Bob Mason of FX Empire, and we will see you again next week.